All right, hello out there, you comic book aficionados, you readers of dreams, you OCD collector of things. Welcome to the Howler Mouse channel. We are coming at you live through YouTube. What is this? August 10th for you people in the future watching this, seeing me in the past. It is August 10th of 2025. And I decided to do a little live show because we have been so busy traveling and doing things that, I had a pretty good jump of doing short little videos and live shows on the video that, I just wanted to make sure that I kind of check in with everyone. How you doing? Okay. And of course, in this busy life, I've been doing quite a bit of reading. Coming up in the near future, there is a comic book convention coming up. Howler Mouse gets a little vacation time. And who knows? Who knows? For you longtime longtime viewers here who have been here a couple years ago, you saw me do a live show on the beach. I managed to go to Myrtle Beach. Think I found a Books a Million, maybe even a comic book shop. I don't know. And I was able to show you some of the ocean waves behind me with some palm trees as I showed you my haul. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of summer in the area and everywhere else. I'm assuming if it hasn't already started, thanks to the magic of Facebook, I see school starting for people. That means you adults and possibly um, maybe you guys who are going to be students in college and things like that, you're going to have hopefully a little bit more free time. And as the weather changes, you'll be able to settle down and look at things and be able to enjoy some of the stuff around you. Um, and it's absolutely wild to me that sometimes I get a little too philosophical when I realize that I sort of do a channel that is more or less targeted at a very intimate hobby, where you sit down and it's you and whatever you're reading, and then we get on here and we want to talk about it or show things or recommend things, right? But yeah, I'm going to show you what I've started, what I have here, what I'm looking at, and then actually, I'm going to towards the end, I'm just going to say, what do you want to see with little videos and stuff? Because I've had a blast doing these little laid back videos where I just turn the camera on a book and I flip through it real quick. I let you see the art. I'd say as little as possible with what I'm reading, maybe a few memories of the book or haven't read in a while. And those seem to be doing very well for this channel. I've had a lot of great feedback. So it's nice to be able to be doing something that well. Okay, so that's fantastic. So I'll see who's out there. Give everybody just a minute to catch on here because it is 6:46 p.m. On a Sunday night. People have to work tomorrow. People are eating dinner. Surely to God, there's not a wrestling pay per view. I watched SummerSlam from last week. I rarely watch them live anymore because they take forever. Cayman X is here. Great to see you, Cayman X. And I have to tell you, as far as SummerSlam as they go, I think the best days are behind them. But I got to tell you, for a 2 day pay per view, it was definitely a mixed bag. But I'm gonna give it like a B plus, okay, because it was definitely entertaining. Some things happened, and there were actually even the train wrecks of matches was enough to kind of make me watch for all the wrong reasons a few times there, right? So anyway, that was great. So, next week, coming up on Sunday in Charlotte, North Carolina, I'll be meeting up. It looks like with the legendary Anderson. If you've watched this channel forever, if you guys look up old videos that I shot called "Tales from the B&D Comic Book Shop," you'll be able to spot Anderson sitting in the corner of the comic book shop as I talk to people, and as we would turn the camera, he would just be in the corner laughing to himself. He actually ended up having quite the following in Canada on this channel because of that. So we'll be meeting up to go down there to the Charlotte Comic Con. I think they have that couple years. There's many different comic book conventions that hit around the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And I tell you what, for the comic book scene down there in the southwestern part of Virginia, I don't know what that is, sort of the central uh, western side of North Carolina. It's great. Okay, I mean, there's a 3 hour. If I put a dot right here in the center where I'm setting, and I sort of put a 3 hour a circle of places I have to drive in, within 3 hours and stuff. The comic book scene is actually still pretty good, but it's really hot in the North Carolina area right now. Okay, came in next. Finished reading Heroes Return, Thor. Specifically, is that the Dan Jurgens, John Romita Jr. books, if I remember right? Honestly, this entire part of Thor, which is right before JMS's feels like an ending to Thor, it might be my new head canon ending to Thor, if I remember that. And he thought it was great. Yeah, yeah. I'm telling you, the '90s really felt like a bookend for classic Marvel. I always say the actual bookend for Marvel to me is Earth X, Justice League versus the Avengers. And then when Bendis came along and we got the Avengers disassembled, that was it. It was over, and it was disintegrating through the '90s. So this is all 2020 hindsight. We all were hoping great things back then, right? Okay, guys. So before I get to the comics, I'm going to show you some of the books that I'm making my way through. I rarely have as much time these days to read as I want, so I don't waste a lot of time. But a friend at work, who we talk about music. Actually, the first time that I met him, he's older than I am, but the first time he met me in my early 20s, I actually had a boombox, if you remember those, in my car in 1995. And when all the other kids were like getting all crazy on what the leftovers of the grunge and getting into Green Day and Baruch Assault and stuff like that, I had my cassette of the Kinks, and I was singing "Fly Like Superman" and "Destroyer" and things like that. So anyway, he was like, "Have you read Slash's autobiography?" And I've seen reels, I've seen videos, I've seen people take excerpts from this and read it. I've bits and pieces of this, and he finally brought it for me to read. And it is from 2007. Slash supposedly wrote it himself with a guy named Anthony Boza, right? And I'm very careful with biographies of any sort because it always seems like there's a formula. There was some oppressive thing happening to them. They always had this one thing they had to overcome, and then they became famous and stuff, right? Well, I've read, I think I'm on the third chapter of this, and I tell you what, it feels like one of the most brutally, and I could be fooled, brutally honest things that I've ever read, where he is calling out his mom, his dad a little bit, talking about their divorce, how it affected him, how at 12 years old he was running around doing drugs, having sex, wanting to be a BMX biker, running around LA, things like that. But what really got me is, and where I stopped, is that his mother, after their divorce, was not only working for David Bowie, she did a lot of, she was an artist who did a lot of fashion stuff for the rock and roll scene. He names off a few albums from the 70s where she made the cover by designing the costumes and dress for the rock stars and stuff. But she ended up having a little bit of a liaison with David Bowie, and David Bowie would come over with his then wife, and they would all just sit around. And apparently, in the rock and roll bougie lifestyle, I don't want to call it bohemian, but apparently it was nothing to have your wife and your lover and all of them sort of, and the kid all just sort of hang out in the 70s and stuff. All right. So I was just like, wow. I mean, that's if he is not being honest, completely honest, then I can just imagine the things he has left out. So yeah, I'm sort of making my way through this. I'm reading about a chapter a night as I go through that to kind of, take it in and savor it. It is written in like first person, so that makes for an easier read, right? The other thing that I'm reading is a few weeks ago, I kind of recapture some of my childhood every now and then. I just had it in front of me. Oh, here it is. Nah. Well. Oh, here it is, right? So a few weeks ago, I showed you I got a better copy. I now have two copies of The Monster at the End of this book. This is the most dramatic book you will ever read. And then I thought back, and I remember people being absolutely in love with this author. I was a Dr. Seuss guy, just to put it out there, right? My comic books, my Dr. Seuss, my Tales of the Fourth Grade Nothing, and things like that. But Shel Silverstein, there were people who absolutely loved his stuff. I have the Giving Tree. He had oh my God, the End of the Sidewalk poems. The man was not only a poet, but he wrote a ton of country songs, I found out. He wrote the cover of the Rolling Stone. Oh God, who did that? Captain. Oh, I cannot remember. I'm going blank. Anyway, there's a song from the 70s called, making on the cover of the Rolling Stone. Why am I going blank? That's going to kill me. They also sang These Eyes. It's the same band. Is it Captain Beefheart? That can't be right. Anyway, but he also wrote Sue. My Name is Sue for Johnny Cash. And he wrote some Waylon Jennings stuff. And I heard or read some more. He wrote over 800 songs, did a ton of books, and he was a poet. And he did The Missing Piece. That is not Pac-Man. This came out in the 70s before Pac-Man. And the entire book is drawn with this horizon line. And our piece, trying to find his missing piece as he runs across, he goes through life and on a journey. It's very philosophical. That's why it's not so weird to see a grown man talking about the children's books. Usually, if I have a children's book running around here, either it's very nostalgic because I read it when I was a kid, or it has magnificent art, like some of the best watercolor and color penciled arts that you will ever find can be in some of these books. But Silverstein had it. This man was an artist with his talk. But basically, with this piece, trying to find his missing piece to make him a circle, he's kind of rolling through life, and he's seeing butterflies and talking to bugs and experiencing harsh weather and singing his songs and everything. And he finds a few pieces he thinks are pieces, but he loses one because he held on to it too tight, where it just wasn't the right fit. And then he found the perfect fit, and he would try to sing his song in life, and he couldn't do it. And he had to slowly let it go because he couldn't talk to the Beatles and smell the flowers and talk to things. His journey was over. So it's very philosophical about sometimes and that's why I'm saying it's up for discussion. The whole journey is better than the destination. The chase is better than the actual catch. While your mind is obsessed with a certain goal, you don't realize you're living your best life around you and stuff like that. So, what is the point of me showing you this? The point is to showing this is sometimes the simplest stories can make us all just sit down and kind of think for a minute and be content, or get you to think about simple things, right? Which is why we're doing a show tonight where I'm just sort of like, let's slow down and show you what I'm reading, and we will look at a few things. Let's just stop for a minute, right? So if you want to get on YouTube, right, unfortunately, where this is a children's book, it kind of you won't be able to share it or read comments if you're into that. But there are several people there's an animated version of this on YouTube. They're about 5 minutes long. There's a great one, a few of them, where someone is just reading the book and showing you the pages, or some of the pages are animated while someone is reading it to you. It's definitely worth it, right? If anything, you're going to lose 5 minutes of your life for something that I think is very cool. So there's the piece, and there's the missing piece that he's trying to find. Just great stuff, right? Sometimes these things are very cool. They kind of remind us of life lessons. Hey, Afro is here, and Jacob Bornoski is here. Hello, everybody say hello to each other. Something that I'm going to start, I showed you Slash, but something I want to start because I found this on clearance. This thing probably cost me $3. I probably should have got the second book. I don't know, but thus far I'm not impressed. But you might like it. It's a generational thing. If you watch this channel, if you watch the Rageaholics channel, if you look at my bookshelf over here, down here, and if I took you upstairs, I have read Elric probably since about 1978 when I was 5 years old, even though starting out I could not comprehend what I was reading. I thought it was a pirate story with some dragons when I was a kid. I understood the Ruby Throne, but the rest of it didn't really get into my head when I read the first Elric story. Whoops. So, but I stuck with it, and it was always in the house. And then all of a sudden, I started hearing the rumblings of The Witcher, right? And then it became, I understood it, a video game. And then all of a sudden, it's a TV show on Netflix and stuff. And we have Harry Cavill playing him, Henry Cavill, our James, our was the James Bond villain, I believe. He was a villain in one of those spy movies and stuff, right? And then he was also Superman, of course, Man of Steel. He was a version of Wolverine, and now he was The Witcher, and he hung around for a few years, for a few seasons, if you will. And I got to tell you what, as much as I'm like not a so much, it's not that I'm not a fan of Henry Cavill. You know what I mean? It's like he's cool. Uh, the things he delivers when he acts and things, but it's not one of those things where I have a fanboy experience and stuff, right? But when I see these interviews where he talks about Warhammer and he kind of geeks out with it and wants to talk about it, when I see that he expects shows to like The Witcher, even though I have not been impressed with this book thus far, it feels very plagiaristic of Elric, in my opinion, on quite a few levels. But he left the show out of the integrity of the book. They were getting away from the source material, he said. So he got out of there and things like that. That's what makes me like Henry Cavill more than anything he's ever done on screen. He seems to be the real deal. He's into this stuff, and it seems like once he's in, he's in. You know what I mean? Like, so doesn't seem to waste his time, right? So this is the first novel, Blood of Elves, with it. I'm reading this, and I'm feeling like I think I was, what was it, 1987. I read my first book of Shannara, Terry Brooks or something, and I was like, this is pretty. I was not impressed, even though it has its fans, but it was sort of like Lord of the Rings wannabe. I'm reading this, and I can't get off the fact that it's like Elric. Even though there's a different reason he's an albino and he's an albino, and Elric's an albino and this guy's an albino, and just there's things I'm reading and I'm just sort of like, how did he get by with this? And it is supposedly the author. I think he's from Poland. Excuse me for you aficionados out there. See, I admit when I've just dabbled into something and done a little bit of research and stuff, right? I do try to keep an open mind. But I've gotten in here, and it's supposedly a bunch of it's influenced by Polish myths and mythologies and things, right? So maybe that's where I'm missing something with a cultural thing, right? But I'm going to try to finish it. I have sort of started it. Luckily, the audiobooks, if you get on YouTube and play around, and I have an Audible account, but I only use it every now and then. I refuse to pay $15 a month. I will build my library every now and then, getting on there. But one of the great things about YouTube and having it in the car and stuff is audiobooks are there, and you can control the speed at which you listen. So I'm probably going to go back and forth a little bit. I'm probably going to listen on audiobook when I'm driving, when I feel like it, read a chapter, and then like read a chapter of Slash and stuff, right? I highly recommend the Slash book if you are any sort of fan, right? And that's enough of that, right? So I'm getting dragged down on that, right? So one of the things, I stopped at a comic book shop yesterday. The wife and I went out to Bristol, Virginia, Bristol, Tennessee, for reasons. We stopped and ate, and then since we were on State Street, that is where you can find Mountain Empire Comics, owned by Rob. I ran in there a little bit. Rob, who's the owner, he has had that store for over 40 years now. I think the first time I got to set foot in it was like 89, I think, when I was about 16. And even though we're not like huge friends, we've consistently picked up our conversations for several decades now, where we left off and everything. And when I was looking around his store, my wife was looking around the store, I saw this sitting on a shelf. I was like, hey, Rob, what do you want for this? He was like, why don't you just take it? And when I got it home, I saw why he let me have it, because this thing is yellowed and beat up and well loved, and exactly what I want. Now, these were some of the adventure comics. This is the first issue where they went to digest size. And within a year, the book was canceled. I got the issue 501, 502, or something like that. This one apparently does have a new story in it with Captain Marvel, and the rest are usually reprints. These reprints range from Silver Age stories. This one has the first uh, story where Superboy, the story where Superboy first meets the Legion. It has a fantastic Alex Toth drawn Black Canary story from the late '60s. It has some Jim Aparo, I want to say Denny O'Neil maybe, or Mike Barr, I don't know, Spectre story. Then it has a Joe Simon, Jack Kirby, Golden Age Sandman story, and then a Jim Aparo drawn. Maybe that's one with Mike Barr story with Aquaman, and it kind of tells you where they're reprinted at, right? But what amazes me is how in the '70s, C.C. Beck, of course, wrote the Shazam series for DC when DC acquired the license and stuff, right? So all of a sudden, when that series got canceled, maybe towards the end of it, they brought in, I think, is it Don Newton? Yeah, Don Newton penciler came in and started giving it a more, I don't know, realistic Al Weiss, heavy blacks, Wally Wood type, renderings of those fantastic characters of yesteryear. This is Iback and stuff like that. But they made the villain Satan, and then it went over to World's Finest, and now we have this one. I've looked this up. I don't see where the Confederation of Hell. That's pretty heavy for the late '70s, especially with Captain Marvel and Shazam. But this is the main villain is Satan. You know, and they start playing around with the Iback and what was it? Iback and Sawback. He starts playing around with their names, and it turns out they get their powers from demons. And the terror. We get Satan, invincible strength. Any indestructible body, Belial, evil wisdom, Beelzebub, flame powers, Asmodeus, evil courage, Cratius, prisoner of flight. So, I mean, this is pretty some heavy stuff, and that's Kid Eternity in there. So I think this is actually a newer story, probably, supposed to be in World's Finest or something, if I thought. But I dig the art, the Don Newton stuff with the Shazam family. I'm a fan of it, even though surely it was where I was a kid. But the real gem in this, guys, before I show everything, I just want to show because we're going to keep this moving along. Comment, guys. Make sure you comment. I'll go through there. But it's this story. Denny O'Neil script, Alex Toth art. That's where they reprint this fantastic Black Canary story with Alex Toth art. I'm a huge fan of this stuff, guys. Right? Despite my immense love of George Perez, Tony Harris, Tom Palmer, Buscema's, Kirby, and all of these. Kirby is Buscema could be in the stuff, man. But I always go back to to these guys, man. These old school guys. The Jack Davises, Joe Orlando, Wally Woods, Kirby is in there. A little bit of Eisner. Dave Sim to me is also sort of the I don't know, the little brother of these guys. And then you have the Alex Toth. He has weight in there. He has a very simplistic style that there's so much there, but so little is there. Look at her hair. But this is the artwork that I just kind of study. And then, of course, you have those classic images from where we were kids of, Aquaman sitting there riding the seahorse and stuff, right? I mean, it is no wonder that I've always been more of a DC than a Marvel guy, right? Stuff like this is what I picked up on. Look at this. There's just these iconic images that you have to discover by reading the book because, come on and focus. Of course, there we go. I mean, that is a fantastic shot of Black Canary on her. I picture a Harley riding her motorcycle. You know what I mean? This is just some iconic stuff. Great stuff. So simple, but it says so much. Just great stuff in there, right? So anyway, these were the things that I was collecting these digest books, and I actually still have them up here above me. When I was like 9 or 10, fourth grade, whatever that was, after Christmas, the second half and stuff, right? And this is where I was reading my Silver Age Legion of Superheroes, and I was already a big fan of the Legion to begin with and stuff, right? So that was for free, and that is fun. That is some great stuff. Those are just fun reads. What do we have here? Afro SF. That graphic novel is quite difficult if you have prior knowledge of Moorcock's novels. That's what I thought. Oh, wait a minute. That graphic novel is quite difficult if you had no prior knowledge of Moorcock's novels. Okay, you're talking about my multiversity. Yeah. Yeah, I totally get it. I totally get what you're saying. But the fun of it is the characters that pop up as Michael Moorcock has put himself in the story also, and going through the multiverse of the Moorcock universe is just straightforward. I don't think it's complicated at all. But you're absolutely right. If you have no prior knowledge of who these characters are, the fun of it is that you can get online and you end up going down the well of these websites that are Moorcock oriented, fandom sites and stuff, and you can find out about these families that are in there, that these characters that have popped up through the multiverse and stuff. It's so dense, and Moorcock has spent decades building up these things that I enjoy going down looking at the reference material to put it together. And it always kills me how I'll find something that I knew, and I'm like, how did I ever forget that? Then I realized, well, you read that back in 1992, Tim, and it's not 1992 anymore, Tim. That kind of thing, right? Afro FX, Quorum is actually better than Elric, and the books both. How long have you been watching my channel? I've said the exact same thing, that Quorum is much better. Even I could pull out the 12 issues with the Magnola art stuff, the King, oh my God, King of Swords, Queen of Swords. Quorum is fantastic. Quorum is very fantastic. Okay, but that's enough of that, guys. Okay, so what else am I reading, right? So I have been going through my books, and as you guys who have watched know, that I did a free show where I was able to get some of the books I purged, throw them out there on the street, sold about 65, 68, 70, I don't remember what it was, $70 worth of stuff. That was a successful day. And I'm slowly trying to get rid of stuff. And I ran across the kid who was in his early 20s, and he went through and he got my Dial H for Hero 52 issues. And he was all excited about the DC 52 from 2010, 11, whatever it was. Hold on. Yeah. But I talked about this before. I talked about what I did. So you can get up. You can look up my old video, probably from 2011, probably put Howler Mouse DC 52. And you see me going through the preview issue where they talked about the DC 52. And this went through everything. I now have two of them, if you will. Went through all 52 books that were coming out. And I had my Kirby knife for you old school writers, old school watchers. I had my Kirby knife, and if I said that this book was going to get canceled, I stabbed it. And man, left and right, I was stabbing books in it. I was like, this has got to be a joke, because they had just successfully done the best crossover they had ever done with Blackest Night. All those years of building things up. Final Crisis, Infinite Crisis, Identity Crisis. There was several years where they were finally getting things right. But anyway, so the kid was all excited, and apparently he loves his DC 52, and that's all the stuff he was wanting to get. And I had this whole talk in that last show where I talked about that, where I'm like, who am I to tell him those books suck? You know what I mean? So, and then I'm like, it's also 14, 15 years ago that all that started. So this is that kid's, that's a generational thing. That is his thing. That is his thing, right? So what I have here is the hardback of Dial H for Hero. All right. This is the complete DC 52 version of Dial H for Hero. I'm a fan of the Dial H, and basically what it is Dial H is that you have a dial, and if you dial HERO, you would turn into different heroes. And the original version of it, especially with Adventure Comics, 490 was the last story. They had several issues where they brought Dial H for Hero back in Adventure Comics with George Perez covers. And I want to say it was Ray Bradbury, maybe. Not Ray Bradbury. Who's the other guy I'm thinking of? Why am I going blank? He wrote the Star Trek episode, City on the Edge of Forever. How can I be going blank on that? Oh, my goodness. I'm going to kick myself. Anyway, he even had a hero that he created. They would take letters from readers, and they would create their own hero and probably draw a picture of it, and they might use that to, when you dial the H, your hero could appear, right? So anyway, this was a whole other concept where this writer that I never heard of, he was a New York Times bestseller, and they're saying that this is a New York Times best-selling series because of China Miéville. So I probably butchered that name, but if you know that guy, great. So he gets in here and he does his own take of it, his own little corner of the DC universe. And it didn't matter because the DC 52, the continuity was a joke. You know what I mean? They didn't even tell all the writers exactly what was going on. So I'm trying to get through this, right? And there's a few things where we have some literary tools being used, a little metaphor for life about losing yourself and being someone else. He busts his dial up. There's more dials in there. But this one person, the first person who uses the dial, this poor soul there, who's, overweight and had a heart attack, and they open of it at 28 years old or 26, and he smokes and he's just a joke. He gets into being these other heroes, and it's time for him to save someone, but his dial is broke. So he fakes a costume and he has to save them as himself. So there's some literary, what's the word? I wouldn't say it actually saves the series for me, right? But there's a little bit of structure and a little bit of subtext there that redeems it a little bit. Then we get into a whole issue about race, and I'm just sort of like, he turns into a Native American hero, and he's like, you can't go out like that. I'm just sort of like, oh, and I'm out. It's just horrible. So I skipped ahead to the next issue, and I think I'm done. But I wanted to reread this, just to be sure I wasn't going to sell something that was out there. I will give something a chance. But if you're a fan of this, let me know. The 52 version of Dial H for Hero. If you never heard of it, I feel like there's a reason. Okay, so there you go. Great Brian Bolland covers. I will say that. Brian Bolland does fantastic covers. I hold on to things sometimes because it has a Brian Bolland cover, right? Um, Brian Bolland is just such a gift, man. I'm so glad he's popular while he's alive to realize he's popular. You know what I mean? So can't believe the man's in his 70s right now. Okay, guys, we're just moving right along. No, I want to stop right here for a second before I go into the comments, and I want to say thanks to everybody that's joined me on this Sunday night. And the other thing is I've been checking out my analytics, and I've been doing some short videos, and for a 15-year-old channel, the videos, they may not be setting the internet on fire, but they are doing very well, in my opinion. So thanks for everybody that's watching those, and let me know if there's any comic books or any rare comic, or like there's anything such as a rare comic, but if there's any oddball comic or anything on your mind you want me to show, I can do it. I'm doing these short videos where I just lay the comic down, put the camera on it, flip through it, give you my thoughts, my memories, and we move on. And I have a stack here I want to do. So for you guys that have been watching those, appreciate it. More are coming. Let me know what you want to see any of those. Definitely put them in the comments. And I checked the analytics, and I had up to, I think what it was, what did it say? Something, it was quite a bit of people, something like 73% of people watching this channel were not subscribed. So take a minute, subscribe. Definitely hit the thumbs up on this stuff, guys. Let people know that we're out there and we talk comics here, little philosophy and read and all sorts of things out there. We talk about more than FOMO and speculation and imaginary key books. Okay, and overinflated prices. I'll bitch about those every now and then, but it's not what we're all about here. But anyway, thanks for everybody that shows up. I do appreciate it. It's probably one of many reasons, but one of the few that I really, really appreciate why I keep doing this and stuff, man. I enjoy this. My joy of it comes from that. So make sure you thumb it up, share the video, make sure you're subscribed, man. I appreciate it, man. Okay, so we've got quite a few people that popped in here. Let's see what we're going to be talking about. We don't want to get Gene Roddenberry, not Gene Roddenberry. I cannot believe I'm going blank on this legendary sci-fi writer's name. I can see Harlan Ellison. Harlan Ellison. It just popped in my head, guys. It just popped in my head. Harlan Ellison, I believe, is in one of those adventure comics. Okay, let's go down here. Keep the comics coming, guys. Okay, Prom One Collector. Nice guess on who the author was, Gene Roddenberry, but it was not him. It was his show. Thomas Bagley, I remember you using your Kirby knife on that preview mag. Yeah, I think the only book that really caught your fancy was OMAC by Keith Giffen. Absolutely. I think I kept the full series. That's probably the only 52 series that I can think of that I kept them all. And it goes all the way back. Oh, where did it go? Of course, what I want to show. There it is. Yeah. So I have multiple copies of the 8 issues of Jack Kirby's OMAC, and then I went ahead a couple years ago and ordered a reader copy of the trade. And yeah, here's the OMActivate. And I'm glad I pulled this out because I need to take the sticker off. I got this for $3 at Ollie's, right? So here's the entire series for $3. I kept a few issues of Frankenstein Agent of Shade also, maybe the Lemire issues, because they crossed over. One or two of the books crossed over with this. I think one definitely crossed over. So yeah, yeah. You remember, that's a great memory. You're absolutely right. I'm not saying I remember it completely, but that tracks, sir. Okay, so great, man. Thomas Bagley, man, we have been on this journey on YouTube for many years. My God, yeah. Harlan Ellison, Afro SF, of course. Yes, you got it. I'm not surprised you were the one to recall it. JP Fawn, what do you think of Terra Man? Do you think he could show up in Guns DC Universe? Do you want him to show up? Believe it or not, I didn't realize it, but I ran across my Superman books because I'm trying to find my app says I have it. I'm trying to find, and I just saw it 2-3 months ago. But I had the issue of Superman where he talks about the hypno glasses, and it's not the hypno glasses; it's Superman's super hypnotism that he puts out, right? But James Gunn called it hypno glasses, so I wanted to go back and make sure I read it. And then as I ran across it, I found out I had the first appearance of Terra Man. Terra Man is such an oddball character that no, I don't think he will pop up with Gunn. But James Gunn has a take. If he brings in the character of Terra Man, it's not going to be the Terra Man of the comics. Does that make sense? I was never a fan of Terra Man, and when Black Adam actually picked up Terra Man in what was it, 52 or World War III, connected to 52 or something, somewhere along the line, Black Adam reached over, grabbed Terra Man, and split him in half. And I'm trying to think. I was watching some cartoon, superhero cartoon, and I had to tell people that's secretly Terra Man. So he's popped up. But no, I'm not a fan of Terra Man. I'm not a big Western guy, if you get what I'm saying. It's got to me, they're a real derivative of the great westerns, but who am I to say? Not a fan of Terra Man, but I also don't. I like Terra Man better than I do King the Conqueror. Does that help? There we go. A space cowboy, man. His name should be Maurice. I would write Terra Man completely different, if I'm thinking of the right guy. China Morville is a wonderful novelist. I love the superhero that made people cry in Dial H, Afro SF. Okay, I'm going to keep reading that because I kind of remember that. I got stuck on the superhero who was made of a chimney and how he kept showing the world that he came from where the superheroes were made out of pieces of a house. The window man, the doorman, whatever they were, and he happened to be the chimney guy. So that's what I got stuck on. He seemed to have themes with these. So I kind of remember the one that made people cry. He's on the cover. I can picture the Brian Ballin image. All right. So Afro, I will try to finish that book just because you said that. Never heard of it. Hey, Gray Man Media, great to see you, sir. Ain't seen you in a while. Prime One collector, the Will Pfeiffer series of Dial H for Hero in the early 2000s is great. In a box right there in my favorite comics. Okay, that's a 20-some issue run. The Caveman issue around issue 11 is in my top 10 comics of all time with that fantastic story. Okay, I have a video somewhere where I'll go through that, and I'm very melancholy and sort of depressed reading it. You know what I mean? I actually had an ex-girlfriend call up and be like, "What the hell are you pulling? Was that a message to me?" So yeah. Hey, John is here. Everybody be like John. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, subscribe. Great Man Media. Why make the person who dials the number become the hero and not delve into how they became a hero? Why not have a group of Z to M great heroes who get assigned work based on the cause? Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to go with that. Basically, it's random, weird superheroes that were. I feel like it was really targeted toward kids for fun, and then, like I said, the Hero series from the 2000s really made it an adult, almost Vertigo-like thing to be. And now we have somebody kind of delving into things like that. So yeah, there's still plenty of ways to go with that, Gray Man. I asked that because I've recently learned about Terror Man and think he could be one of the most underrated villains ever. Well, JP Fawn, I'm not a fan of the guy. You know what I mean? He's a space cowboy. But if you like him, man, go for it. You know what I mean? Like, if you find some redeeming qualities in there, I just need to find that one story. You know what I mean? To me, they were trying to do, I said, it's starting to come back to me, those 70s issues and stuff that I read with the poncho on him and the green pants and stuff, or the metallic horse and stuff. I really feel like they were really trying to kind of target the spaghetti westerns of Clint. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm not the. You figure I would be the guy that would like throw out all the knowledge on you on Terror Man, but no, I've kind of avoided him. When I saw him on a cover of a book, I had very little interest in seeing Superman fight a cowboy. Imagine a crossover between Superman and Thor and Ego and Terror Man. That okay. Thomas Bagley, a future episode topic on novels based on comic characters would be cool. Marv Wolfman wrote a Spider-Man novel in the late 70s. Peter David's Hulk novel, dare I say, incredible. I'll see what I have. I have a few. I have like Rising Stars, a bunch of short story compilations in the Silver Surfer book. I'll see what I have left. I used to have quite a bit. I think I have Kingdom Come. I believe I have Last Days of Krypton. I don't know if I have enough to do it, but yeah, that'd be great. Gray Man, have you heard of anyone at Marvel, DC, Image, or other publishers regarding the publishing of a SCP Foundation stories? SCP is PD, and anyone could use it. So why not tell a few stories? Haven't heard that much. I'm not following anymore a lot of what's going on currently. When I do check in or I do kind of look at some of these books and stuff like that, it's exactly what I thought it was. You know what I mean? It's not my thing. I've not been impressed for a while with a lot of things they do. And I'm going to actually show a book here in a minute that blows my mind that it has popped up. Thomas Bagley, Resurrection Man, has almost like an adult version of Dial H, with the lead getting a different power each time he dies. Thomas Bagley, that is a great observation about Resurrection Man. I have a few issues. My first issue of Resurrection Man was the million issue 1 million. I have got a handful of Resurrection Man. Hitman showed up in Resurrection Man, but I loved in his issue 1 million when it was during the Grant Morrison 1 million crossover at the time, where all the books jumped ahead like they were issue 1 million in the year 857,612, and he had some kind of like, didn't he have like an alien scorpion or something in a capsule tied to his wrist, and whenever he needed a new power, he would hit it, it would poison him, he would die, and he would come back with a new power. Things like that were very cool, very innovative, man. And Jackson and Butch Geist did the artwork on those. Fantastic. Yeah. Afro, because there was no Justice Society in the New 52, Dial H introduced heroes we never heard of that existed before the Justice League formed. Nice. Okay. So apparently I need to really give this book, I need to finish it, it sounds like. Gray Man, I remember the Resurrection Man character in the Jelly Run in the late 90s. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, good stuff there, right? Okay, guys. So to keep on track here, I'm going to be showing some Bode in a minute. We'll talk about that, right? But one of the things I want to show you is that this is blowing my mind, right? I was sent an article that this isn't really so much a done deal, but I've had this in a purge box, right? Probably since 2000, well, probably since I finished it back in 2006 or 7. And of course, the back of it looks like, I hope that's not damage. I could probably clean that off. Anyway, I hope that's not mildew. But anyway, I put this in a box as soon as I got it, but I bought this on a whim. Called Sidekick #1. And apparently this has jumped up to a $12 book, actual value. And this is by Paul Jenkins. It was, I believe, 5 issues. Yes, 5 issues at Image Comics, if you will. Yeah, I don't think they're damaged. I think that's the that's not damaged. I thought I mildewed it and stuff like that, but that's part of the advertisement to make the back of your book look dirty because it's not on any of the white parts. So that's part of the advertisement. Sorry, guys. I had a moment there about trying to grade this right in front of you. So anyway, Sidekick, right? So Sidekick is one of those stories where I thought Paul Jenkins was trying to be Garth Ennis a little bit, right? Where we have these silly little characters who are tropes of comic book heroes, okay? And then you add some real life consequence in there. You add a little sex in there or something like that. But if you read The Boys, where Garth Ennis doesn't really like heroes, you kind of get where this is going. And I don't really like that stuff too much. There's a place for it. You have Garth Ennis. The books I can name that I remember this being, I have not read this in coming up on 20 years. I mean, I have not read this since it came out because I really did not dig it. But basically, what comes about it is that it doesn't, you can make heroes, you can have heroes have feet of clay. And you can do things where you call out hypocrisy in your heroes, your squadron supremes and stuff, right? And you can have your heroes be ridiculous and immoral. You can have them be your Guy Gardners, things like that. So I'm not saying that our heroes should shine all the time, right? But what I'm saying is that to me, you need to really respect the genre, respect comics with what you're doing. You know what I mean? And this thing here is just, I found it very insulting, right? So basically, what we have is a pizza boy who's trying to make ends meet, and he also plays as a sidekick, right? So in order to make more money, he gets with 4 or 5 other heroes, all these heroes here, and he decides to have different costumes to be each of their sidekicks, right? And that's pretty much the premise. And it's the thing where all the heroes end up coming out looking like idiots or pretentious, narcissistic dregs and all this stuff like that. Meanwhile, he's like getting his ass kicked and being thrown around and a little bit slapstick. I mean, he's getting his nuts kicked in the beginning of it. Now, Paul Jenkins is the guy who has wrote Hellraiser, right? He created or co-created Sentry. So that's why I'm kind of wondering how this came about because they're turning this obscure. And I've searched YouTube. I've never seen anybody over the years talk about Sidekick. I'm not saying the videos aren't out there, but in 15 years, I've never run across anybody saying, hey, this is Sidekick. I might have shown this once or twice. And if I shown it, it's because I was going through a whole box of comics and said, this is in the box and went on, right? So what are they doing with this? They are turning this, or at least attempting to turn it into an animated series. So all I could figure out if I had to speculate, I don't know how this came about, but Paul Jenkins, who's wrote many great things over the years, don't get me wrong, he has his fans. I've also realized that as much as I hate, he wrote Wolverine's origin, and I was like, what the hell are they doing? So he also brought back Captain Marvel. Kind of people kind of forget that Captain Marvel, who died in his own graphic novel, and I remember him having to come out and he got a lot of hate, and he was telling people, hey, I was hired by Marvel to do this. They said, we want you to write the return of this. We want you to write the origin of this. So it wasn't so much his ideas and his pitches, but he was hired as a writer to do these things, which made it more forgivable. This Pride and Prejudice version, or I think that's what it was, what I compared it to, of Wolverine's origin, I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was horrible. I just pretend it doesn't happen. The return of Captain Marvel, as temporary as it was, it's like it never happened and things, right? His Hellblazer stories never really popped out at me and stuff like that. So it just kind of blows my mind how we could have an obscure book that I have been trying to get away. I put this on eBay 3 or 4 times since about 2007. When did this come out? Let's take a look here. 2006, all right? So we'll say 2008. 2008, I started trying to get rid of this and I've never been able to get rid of this, right? But it's also the same effect. The Jessica Jones Alias books, I bought those monthly. I ordered those online, would get them, read them all the way through. I like when Bendis does cops and private investigators, but I hate when he does heroes, if you follow me. Couldn't get rid of those either until the TV show. So now we're going with this. I feel like it's because of Invincible and The Boys and the tone and the fact that Sentry is there. I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of guessing, but I'm really amazed. And I looked at it. Number one is worth $12. That's the actual book value right now, guys. Comicbookrealm.com, your online actual price guide. Of course, you go over to eBay, there's inflated prices. I saw one for $50 the other day or something like that. I don't know. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I'm going to reread this. I'm going to reread this and see if I despise it as much as I did at the time, because I think I was just getting sick of seeing these books come out. It was a thing where, like I said, your heroes are narcissistic jerks and things like that, right? How do I still have it here? Don't tell me I put it up. But let me show you. I'll show you how it needs to be done, right? If you're going to do sidekicks. Oh, yeah, and Brat Pack. Rick Vetch. Yeah, Rick Vetch had Brat Packs. It kind of put me in the mind of that a little bit, right? So if you're going to do the thing where your hero is sort of a joke and you want the sidekick to be the straight man a little bit and see him get kind of abused and stuff, nobody's done it better than the Tick, especially when they made it to the Heroes Club and they had the Sidekicks Lounge and stuff like that. There's a place for it. It all feels derivative of this. You know what I mean? Done better by Ben England. And I think this came out in 1991. Yeah. I'm pretty sure this is a book that came out in 1991 with Arthur being the sidekick and things like that. They actually, it was Tick versus Tick. I think it was issue 10. We got to see all that, and that made it into the Tick cartoon on Fox, guys. So it's been done better, is my whole point. So we'll see if I still want to slam that book too much, right? As much as I have. Hey, here we go. Gray Band Media. Did Sidekick come out in the 90s? I just said it was 2006. I had to look it up. He's Decoy, the Pig Hostage on Comedy Central or Adult Swim. So, okay, so this is happening. Okay. As for Afro XX, most of the writers from the British invasion didn't really like superheroes, in my opinion, except Grant Morrison. Yeah, that's yeah. I don't know about Alan Grant. Alan Grant seemed to. I'm not going to speculate right now because I really need to think about this. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot of those 2000 AD guys that have. There's a certain style of writing and very political and thoughts on religion that are very different, but at the same time, Watchmen worked because it was Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons having an outside view of America and American heroes. You know what I mean? So there's something to say about that point of view and the point of in their writing. You know what I mean? But no, you're absolutely right. Garth Ennis has said, I met Garth Ennis. Garth Ennis told me he doesn't like heroes. I've got a 30-second clip in my reels, or whatever you call it, stories or whatever. You can find it on my channel where I'm talking to Garth Ennis. Comics satirizing comic book tropes have become a trope itself. That's the best way to put it, Thomas Bagley. Let me get a drink of water here. Yeah, it has become a trope itself. That's the word I used was derivative, but you're right. It is a trope. Comics. I wish I could share that on the screen, right? And then Gray Band Media, agree. Thomas Bagley, absolutely. Comics satirizing comic book tropes has become a trope itself. That's amazing. I just want to say that over and over. Mark Miller's Unfunnies tried doing the same thing with comic strip characters. Oh my goodness. See, I'm from the Mad Magazine era, and I've got upstairs as we speak, or maybe down here, I have the 1980 special where they took all their strips, what they did with comic strips, things like that. That I think nobody's done it better. I have not read Unfunnies. Gray Man. So One Punch Man didn't do it the best. Fantastic, right? Okay, so I got one or two things I'm going to kind of show. Now, like I said, I've done a little videos where I just put the camera on the comic. We flip through the comic together. And let me know if these are anything you guys would want to see. And then we're going to get to some Bode. Cobalt 60 post-apocalyptic epic illustrated kitchen sink or Tundra publishing stuff, right? I want to kind of show, right? So Jim Shooter's the best story you never heard of, Charlemagne. This takes place in the 70s, but I think he's a 10-year-old kid. This will be him as a grown man. His brother goes to Vietnam, becomes missing in action, and this little kid is able to get out of his suburb. He stows away on mercenary ships, and then he makes it to Vietnam, and he's walking around Vietnam trying to find his brother. And right when he finds his brother, they get hit with, I don't know if he steps on a landmine or something happens, war related, and the kid ends up going into a coma with his legs shot off. And then years later in the 90s, he wakes up and he has grown his legs back and he's super strong and he has a destiny. One of Jim Shooter's greatest, and my favorite, we won't say greatest, we'll say one of my favorite Jim Shooter stories that most people have never heard of. Are you interested in seeing that? My first issue of All-Star Squadron, where Steel comes in here. I thought he was a Golden Age character, not somebody created in the 70s, but these are all Golden Age characters fighting a gigantic praying mantis on a train. That is what every kid wants to see. I was about 9. Do you want to see that? And then this was my favorite issue of Captain Carrot and his amazing zoo crew. Do you want to see that? Web of Spider-Man, another Jim Shooter story where in one issue, the Watcher has been taken hostage and captured by this alien who's going to kill the Watcher. But unknowingly to Spider-Man, he doesn't know any of this is going on the moon. But he decides he's going to play some football with one arm tied behind his back with some school kids, and they make a bet. If the kids beat if one Watcher takes one side, the alien takes another side, what happens? If does the Watcher die based on the cosmic thing? Starman. This is how Jack Knight Starman is responsible for Jor-El finding Earth when Jor-El's a teenager in this, and he meets Jack Knight, and Jack Knight gives him the binary formula to let him know what Earth is, which is where he ends up sending Kal-El. So Jack Knight is responsible. Animal Man. He meets a tribe of, shall we say, shaman Sasquatches. Would you be interested in that? Jamie Delano, another British writer. And then we have one of the greatest things that I absolutely love that you've never read. This is just pure fun. But we have Paul Levett's Keith Giffen reuniting for a Legion of Superheroes annual. I think this is right before DC 52. We have the Emerald Empress fighting the Legion of Superheroes, Jack Kirby style. And not only do we get to see some great Keith Giffen doing his best Kirby art with the Legion of Superheroes, but we also have some cool things in the back. We have a 4-page superhero board game that you can play. And then, kids, there's even more, but we get Interlac A to Z. We get to learn how the alphabet of Interlac, the language of the 30th of the year 3000, the 31st century. D is for dark side, and we see the symbol that is now D. We go back to my beginning of the missing piece. That is not Pac-Man, that's the letter D. Yeah. So, yeah, that's how you become a Legion fan and able to read all those backgrounds where Keith Giffen and they gave us a whole alphabet and stuff, right? So if you're interested in any of those, let me know. I'll probably be making the videos. Let me see what we got here. Thomas Bagley, that Web of Spider-Man was a nice fill-in after the heavy Kraven's Last Hunter storyline. I can't believe I'm writing this, but I miss fill-ins. No, Thomas, you should know that those are necessary. Do not feel ashamed because you're absolutely right. For people that don't remember this or never really picked up on it, back in the day, you would have storylines that were multi-part stories. 2-part stories, 3-part stories, 4-part stories. Now that's significant because when these stories came out, and if they did cross over with other books, when that was still a rare thing, at least up until about 86, they didn't have the trade paperback in mind, right? You will find that stories through the 90s, especially into the 2000s till today, they think trade paperback and they think 6 issues and things like that. That's one of the things that really hurt comics and brought the decompressed storytelling, right? So what they would do is that they would have a issue of in between. You have a big storyline, right? Kraven's Last Hunt, as he said, right? And before we would get into the next big crossover storyline where Spider-Man was locked up in an asylum, you would have a issue in between, a fill-in issue. One of the most famous fill-in issues, that not famous, but familiar fill-in issues for a lot of people, would be Rob Liefeld coming on and doing an issue of X-Men where they were making fun of DC's Invasion crossover. Rob Liefeld came in and drew all these big time aliens and stuff. That was really funny because the X-Men were in the outback, and that's in Australia. And at DC Invasion, they invaded. Australia was the battleground on Earth, if you will, right? So it was a parody, satire, if you will, right? But it was also a palate cleanser. In between big story arcs, you would have palate cleansers, just a fun little story, you know what I mean? Complete little one issue story, sort of a breather for the audience. It's much like a horror movie, right? You would have kill, and then you would have something funny happen, just so that you would relax and be able to get scared again, like in your thrillers and stuff. Go watch Jaws. It's the master of it, things like that. So yeah, the fill-in issues were great. I also miss jobbers and wrestling. You know what I mean? So yeah. Afro SX, Starseed, Powers. That would be my favorite Jim Shooter books. I enjoyed the Nights on Broadway book. Afro SX, I think you asked me to check out that company. For people that don't know, Jim Shooter was at Marvel's greatest era, in my opinion. New Universe, got fired, started Valiant. He got pushed out by Valiant because of the deal with Acclaim coming. They went behind his back, pushed him out. He started Defiant. Defiant went down because Marvel decided to sue him over a character named Plasmer when he had the Warriors of Plasm. Jim Shooter wins the lawsuit, but they used all their funds in fighting the lawsuit. So they closed down. And then all of a sudden he got a bunch of backers and came out with this new comic book company, Broadway Comics. And by that time I was out. You know what I mean? I have all the Defiant comics. I have all the Valiant comics that I want from the Shooter era. So yeah. Peter David's The Commuter Cometh with Spidey Stuck in the Suburbs was my favorite fill-in. I had that, and I acquired that book when I was in 7th grade, and I was sitting in the hospital, and I had my appendix out, and people were bringing me. I was stuck in the hospital for 5 days because it was very close to exploding inside me. It was pretty bad. But anyway, I had people bringing me comics for days while I was there, and that was in there. It also had Red 9. What was that? Not Red 9. Anyway, it had that red. I also got an issue where there was a redheaded dude with a number 9 on him or something like that. It was part of it also. Okay, Thomas Bagley, Fatale by Broadway was my favorite. It starred a big booby heroine whose adventures kind of make fun of the bad girl craze in the mid-90s. That's Thomas Bagley. J.P. Fawn, I wouldn't mind getting the skinny on your Captain Carrot and Amazing Zoo Crew. Yeah, we'll have some fun with this, right? People seem to be going for the books. I did one on Superman and the Legion of Superheroes with Ambush Bug. They put the funny and funny books, and I did another one that was sort of lighthearted. People seem to be really going for the lighthearted stuff, right? So, guys, we're going to talk about real quick something. Thanks for everybody that's in here. I know we got to work tomorrow. So, like I said, guys, make sure you're subscribed, thumb up the video, and share it, okay? Even on the rewind, guys. Come on, all right? So, 1978. I don't mind telling you how old I was. I was 5, right? The stepdad and my mom had probably only been together for 2 years or something like that, right? And there's a community college here. Funnily enough, the community college is still there. I ended up going to it also, right? And in that community college, they had the auditorium. I don't want to act like it was huge, but it actually kind of circled, right? And I got taken at 5 years old to a double feature they were showing, right? And there is a song that Soul Asylum covered. Who was it? It wasn't Patti Smith. I hate to get her name wrong. But if you go back to 1993 and look up a Soul Asylum video, they remade this song, which is part of a benefit album for the writer of the song who had a very bad disease. But they redid one of her songs, and it started out saying, "Oh my God, I can't think what the name of the song is," but the line in the song is, "They were the hippies that missed out on the love." Okay, they were too old to be hippies. They were too young. Got it. They were too young to be hippies, missed out on the love, right? And that's how I see the burnouts in the kids of the 70s, right? And I'm surrounded by them, right? The bad beards, the mustaches. They're wearing, Green Army jackets and stuff. They got their headbands and their bad facial hair and all this stuff. And I'm sitting in the middle of this, and the double feature, my friends, get ready for this, was Ralph Bakshi, right? It was Lord of the Rings, and it was Wizards. Okay. And all I know is that this was the one. They both grabbed me, but this was the one, right? Somewhere I've shown it before. I had the VHS tape, the bootleg, where it had Wizards, Lord of the Rings, and two other movies on it, Heavy Metal, and God, I can't think of the third one off the top of my head. Light Years, or I don't know. I have it here somewhere, guys. I've shown it many, many times. So anyway, that's from the bootleg of the 80s and stuff, right? So this, I have bootlegged this. I had it on VHS in the 90s, and of course I got it on DVD, and I recently bought it digitally when it was on sale for $5 and stuff, right? Now, what am I telling you all this stuff, right? Even though this has heavy tones of that hippie era, if you will. That's why a lot of people can't stand it. The people also love it, but basically it has Bode. This is underground stuff, right? Ralph Bakshi ended up using Robert Crumb for Fritz, the cat that Robert Crumb hated. So this is infamous for having a scene where they yelled, "They killed Fritz," the killed Fritz scene. But this was Bode. Bode was a underground artist, highly influenced me. This also has Mike Plugart, guys. Mike Plug, Bode. Bakshi is pulling from these comic book guys, these underground comic book guys. And Bode was highly influential with his Cheech Wizard, his Three Lizards cover, a whole bunch of stuff that he did. And apparently it was a huge influence on graffiti artists and stuff, right? And the main story of this is that the world has been nuked. 3 million years later, the fairies grew up, but the humans and the animals that were around that weren't fairy like and stuff, and mythical creatures there, they turned into mutants, if you will, right? Dirty, nasty, scoundrel mutants. And then we have two brothers, Black Wolf and Avatar, and they're brothers. Avatar is the good brother. Black Wolf is the bad brother. He ends up leading the mutants. And we end up having a great big huge war of science and magic because technology has been outlawed for 3,000 years by this time and stuff like that, right? Some great stuff on here, right? Uh, Mark Hamill. This came out in this movie, as you find out in this, came out the same weekend as Star Wars. So Luke Skywalker and Mike Hamill is in Star Wars, all right? And he does, Mark Hamill, the voice artist, has a little character in this. So yeah, Mark Hamill had two movies technically come out in 1977. So I got to watch that in this little theater, probably on whatever they had back then, 8mm, 16mm. All right. So imagine my surprise when I start, getting a little bit older, and we have Epic Illustrated in here. I think this is issue 27, right? This came out in 1984, December of 84. Epic Illustrated is something that I highly recommend people read. You had Heavy Metal and you had Epic Illustrated. This is Marvel's, I guess, answer to Heavy Metal, but I enjoyed it very much. These will never be collected because it has artwork that has been produced elsewhere. People kept the rights to their stories. And in this, we get an introduction to Cobalt 60. Okay. Now, it's Von Bode was the original artist. He died. You can get on YouTube and you can find places where he's in college campus rooms as they're doing a slideshow of his artwork, and he's talking to him very cool in his very hippie cool style back then, laid back, and all stuff like that. Well, he died, and his son, Mark Bode, decided to continue his work. And in 1959, when he was still in school, Mark Bode, this is one of my favorite characters, ended up doodling a picture of Cobalt 60. Cobalt 60 is a post-apocalyptic world where the mutants are there and there's this last line of humans. And Cobalt 60 is part of that last line of humans. And there's a mutant called Strodium 99 or something like that wants to capture him because he's going to be king of the humans. The humans are dying out and stuff, right? Well, Mark Bode, or Von Bode, the original, Von Bode didn't do too much in it, but we get the original 1968 reprinted comic of Cobalt 60, right? And this is some heavy stuff, guys. The contradiction of the cartoony artwork that attracted me as a kid with this heavy post-apocalyptic world stuff is just outstanding. To me, this stuff still kind of holds up. And this is one of the things that influenced my reading for life. Commandy, we'll let that kind of quit. Come on, YouTube. I feel like I'm telling you guys some stuff that they don't want us to know about. There we go. Why is it doing that? Sorry, guys. I say the white pages messed it up. Let me give it something to, yeah, the white pages messed that up, right? So I can't show you two more. But that's okay, because once we get the original story from 1968, but this Wizards, everything about it influenced my reading, right? I started, I was a Commandy fan. We had Mad Max. I can show you Superman covers from 1984, where growing up in a world of the Cold War, and 1984, the actual year, thanks to the Orwell story book called 1984. As kids, we really thought nuclear war was coming. ABC had a movie they made for TV called The Day After Tomorrow or something like that, where it showed what would happen if we were bombed at nuclear war. We, in fifth grade, we really worried about this stuff. We thought it was really going to happen, right? So anyway, this is just the things that were permanent. We had Thundar the Barbarian, which was caused by a comet, not a post-apocalyptic war. You know, I can go on and on. If you go back, the post-apocalyptic stuff is my favorite genre. Doomsday +1 by John Byrne, stuff like that, right? So his son decides to continue the story and pick up on it. Okay, guys. And this is all in Epic Illustrated. Epic Illustrated would really only last for a while. So his son picking up on it. Like I said, there's some really cool stuff in this. So there's all sorts of little 5-minute interviews and synopsis on this stuff in Cobalt 16. That's where I got my education on this, right? The only Von Bode stuff that I've ever ran across in real life was at Heroes Con a few years ago, and it was 4 issues of a Von Bode underground comic, and they were, I think, $40 a piece, or yeah, I think they were $40 a piece. And as I sat there staggered that I was holding them in my hands, one person behind me was looking at me, knew exactly what I was thinking. It was like the fact that it's Bode. The fact that it's Bode almost makes it worth it, doesn't it? Like, we connected. So I've met a kindred spirit there for a second that I'm always going to remember, because we were right on the same page, right? So years later, there's a 4-issue series that came out. I want to say Kitchen Sink put this out. No, it's Tundra. Anything with Tundra, you might as well pick up. They came out with 4 issues, continuing the story, right? So this is what I'm reading. I have issue 1 and 4. The cheapest I ever find these online are $20 a piece for issues 3 and 4. I don't know, but as I started reading the stuff and pulling this stuff out last week, let's do that. As I started pulling this stuff out last week, I got on YouTube and went down the well a little bit, and I saw something where Mark Bode was saying that he had the 8th volume of something coming out of this. So I don't know if there's more out there, but that's what I want to be trying to track down, right? So Bode, I keep saying Bode. I said Bode for years. Sorry, guys, but it's Bode. Mark Bode, Von Bode, heavily influenced me as a kid, man. It stuck with me. He must have been 5 years old seeing that. And if you haven't watched Wizards, check it out, guys. Like I said, I've recommended it, and most people have liked it a lot. We're going to have to end this due to technical issues. Sorry, guys. So let's get through this here. Let me read what we got here, and we'll move on, because that camera messing up is flipping me out. Let me see what we called. Captain Carrot meets Spider-Ham is a crossover we need. I agree. That would be one for the ages, Thomas. Gray Man Media, aren't those types of stories called cool-down stories, similar to a cool-down match with after Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay? I don't see why they couldn't be called that. I think it's fair enough. Thomas Bagley, I remember Fatale. She had powers stellar to Rogue, I think. One of my best friends was obsessed with the original animated Lord of the Rings, J.P. Fawn. I still watch it. A lot of people now put it down after we've had these online. Seriously, I've seen it where people were like, well, this is crap. There was a whole video to point out how bad it was, right? Guys, in 78, 77, when that came out and stuff like that, I think it's a very important movie if you are a fan of Tolkien and stuff. It kind of brought it to a whole generation and put it in people's minds. I still have it on DVD. You can stream it, I think, you can find it on streaming in quite a few places. I think it not only does it hold up despite the rotoscope and stuff, but it's very soothing. I can actually use it to calm me and go to sleep. You know what I mean? And that's not a bad thing. That's not what I'm saying. It hits the highlights. And then you have the Baskin Rass Return of the King. The Lord of the Rings by Ralph Bakshi only really covers the Two Towers and Fellowship. It doesn't do Return of the King, but once Bakshi didn't finish it, Baskin and Robbins. Oh my God, is that the ice cream place? Baskin and Rass. Oh, guys. Okay, guys, help me out here. Anyway, there's another cartoon by the people who did The Hobbit. Okay, the Hobbit cartoon at the time. What a great time to grow up, man. I was watching The Hobbit in school. That's where I got to see the Hobbit cartoon. Okay, here we go, man. JP5, one of my best friends, was obsessed with during the Lord of the Rings. Thomas Bagley, you can see a lot of Bode on Sam Keith's work. Keith is the love child of Bode and Arthur Pseudonym. That's right, Bagley. I've said that before. I've met Arthur Pseudonym. I got pictures of us talking. We talked about Al Williamson. I got to tell Arthur Pseudonym, catch him up on what Blade Runner was and Al Williamson's work on that. It was great. He signed one of my Epic Illustrated books, and when he opened it up, it had an advertisement for the Blade Runner comic adaptation, and we had a great talk. It was fantastic at Heroes Con. Hard to believe that's probably around 2013 or 14 that happened. Did you like the post-apocalyptic text series? Yeah, I mean it's what it was. I hate that I got rid of it. I would really like to get it back, but I had the series. I got a kick out of it for what it was, but I was sort of in on what they were doing. It was Mad Max, guys. You know what I mean? It was Clint Eastwood as Mad Max. You know what I mean? Is how I remember it. Okay, but I mean, you can look at Jonah Hex's costume. I'm trying to think. I think it was a Justice League Bruce Timm Paul Tini book or something. But Jonah Hex popped up in some cartoon I watched, and he mentioned he had been to the future and just kind of left it at that. He says time travel wasn't new to me, and I knew they were talking about the Hex series. I dug it. It was supposed to be Mad Max. His costume even looked like Mad Max that they put Jonah Hex in. I was cool with it, man. I was very cool with it, man. All right, guys. So as you can see, or at least it's showing up for me, something's going on with my camera since I made it go out of focus with those white pages. So I'm going to call it. Thanks for everybody that's popped in. Thanks for everybody that sat here. Thanks for the comments. And like I said, make sure you subscribe, thumb it up, and like it. I think I'll grab a couple of Captain Carrot books and maybe make a few other videos and stuff, right? So, guys, make sure you hit that bell when you subscribe too, so you know when I'm going to do this, right? There, I got a comic book convention coming up. We got vacation coming up. I could pop up at any time. So, guys, be excellent to each other and read your comics, man. Later.